Okay, so the question is society better off with or without religion? So I believe society is better off with religion. And this is how I think about it. I think of religion as the software that runs on the hardware of human brain. And religion is like the source coding of culture. So if you open up command prompt, that level of code, that's like the religious level of code for the software, which is human culture. And there's good and bad software. And I'm going to make the argument that certain religions are a net positive for society. Obviously, there are some religions that are terrible. Like if there's a religion that says we should kill everyone but me, that's probably a religion that's bad for society. So just like there is bad software, there are bad religions. Now I'm going to make this case from an evolutionary biological perspective. So I'm going to make the case that religion is an adaptive feature of evolution, which means that religion evolved because it benefited the people who practiced it. And this is a different perspective from the perspective of people like Richard Dawkins, a lot of the mainstream cringe atheists, I like to refer to them, jokingly of course. But the Richard Dawkins perspective is that religion is a mind virus, a parasitic mind virus, right? So the idea is, just like there are parasites that will hijack the body of a certain animal, a host, and then screw it over. Religion does the same thing with humans, right? So religion is a parasite that operates on the minds of humans and just screws them over and causes them to sacrifice themselves for no reason and all that stuff. So like there's an ant. I don't know what the exact fungus is called, but there's a parasitic fungus that its spores latch onto ants' bodies, and then the ant runs up a tree, pincers itself to a tree trunk, and then the ant dies and its body becomes food for the fungus. And then the fungus consumes the ant and then it spreads its spores everywhere. And so that's a parasitic relationship. Great for the fungus, terrible for the ant. So that's how the traditional, I would say, evolutionary biological perspective is of religion. But I'm going to argue that it is actually an adaptive feature of evolution. It's symbiotic relationship. So the common example of a symbiotic relationship is people have seen there's little fish that clean the teeth of sharks. So the sharks benefit from having the fish eat the fungus off the teeth, and the fish benefit because they get, food. And so it's a symbiotic relationship. And so the idea is that religion is a positive software on net, not that there are no negative aspects to religions or certain religions aren't terrible, but on net, something like mainstream Christianity or some sort of moderate form of Christianity is definitely good for society, good for the people that practice it. I think the nuanced issue that's going to come up in this debate is exactly to what degree or how are we going to balance the negatives versus the positives? Because there are clearly negatives for religion, right? So for example, hating people who do not believe in your God, right? That's a bad aspect of religion. Then you have things like repressing sexuality and regressive sexual taboos. That's all bad. However, the nuance here, when you look at a little bit closer, some of these norms have, again, adaptive value. And the question is, do they still have adaptive value in our modern environment? So for example, like hating people who aren't in your tribe. It's like, that's bad. However, if you had a religion that said, we are all from the same tribe, we are all children of God, and humans are not the enemy per se, it's the evil spirit, and you outsource that enemy from a person to a psychological idea, then that's good for society, right? Because that fosters in-group cohesion. But even something like repressing sexuality, it's like, okay, clearly, what did Sam Harris say? The only institution that produces more child abuse than the educational institution is the Catholic Church, which I agree with. The Catholic Church has very regressive sexual taboos, and that causes the kind of sexual neurosis that we hear about in the news far too often. However, if you look at it from an evolutionary point of view, you think, okay, wait a second. If we were living in a society where there was no birth control, there were no condoms, and there was the possibility of sexually transmitted disease, which was fatal, you could very clearly understand why, hey guys, it's 5000 BC, we don't have condoms, we don't have any way to treat disease, everyone should just have sex with one person. That probably makes sense. And you would say, okay, well, you know what? We can argue about the morality of it and how it, limits liberty, but you would certainly acknowledge that from an evolutionary perspective, the population that does that, the population that imposes strict sexual taboos in the absence of condoms and whatnot, well, they're better off, right? And my point is that when you look under the hood, there's a lot of adaptive features of religions like that. And we obviously can separate the wheat from the chaff, right? We can say, okay, it's probably saying that everyone who has sex before marriage is going to hell, probably not a good idea. And you can see the variations, like in Eastern Orthodox, priests can get married. And as far as I know, the problem with sexual abuse is not nearly as high in the Eastern Orthodox religion as in the Catholic religion. We can look at it with a rational lens and sort of adjust. But the fundamental kind of tenets, the fundamental source code of the software of culture are these religious ideas that, for example, we're all the children of God, that everyone should be created equal, right? Our entire, I would say, Western kind of ethic is built on the idea that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator, and we hold these truths to be self-evident, whatever the Declaration of Independence / Constitution and all that outlines. In the Declaration of Independence, it says we hold these truths to be self-evident. And I'm not suggesting the Declaration of Independence is the foundational text, but it does illustrate the ethic that we all operate in. And that's not one that's amenable to rationality. There's no rational reason why we should treat everyone as if they're children of God. It's a faith claim, it's a religious claim, and our entire moral and productive culture is built on that. So I'm very interested to hear what T-Jump has to say, Tom, regarding the whether or not he thinks religion is adaptive, whether or not he thinks there's any evolutionary kind of significance behind it, and whether it's worth investigating. But yes, I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Woo-hoo! Thank you so very much for your opening